President Trump hosting NYC's mayor-elect Zohran-Mamdani in the Oval Office today. The highly anticipated meeting generating huge public interest and widespread social media buzz. Expected to address federal-city cooperation on housing, infrastructure, and public safety. The House of Representatives votes on a resolution to denounce socialism. The Republican lawmaker who introduced the resolution explains why. President Trump suggests he's giving Ukraine 6 days to accept a new U.S.-brokered peace deal. How Ukraine is responding to the fast-developing peace process. President Trump is lifting a 40% tariff on Brazilian food products, including on beef, coffee, and cocoa. Details on the new executive order and how the market reacts. An infant botulism outbreak has expanded to 15 states. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says 31 children have been hospitalized.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. President Donald Trump and New York City Mayor-elect Zohran-Mamdani are set to meet at the White House today. Here's what the press secretary had to say about the meeting.
It speaks volumes that tomorrow we have a communist coming to the White House because that's who the Democrat Party elected as the mayor of the largest city in the country. I think it's very telling, but I also think it speaks to the fact that President Trump is willing to meet with anyone and talk to anyone and to try to do what's right on behalf of the American people.
President Trump confirmed the meeting via a Truth Social post. Mamdani has already sparred publicly with Trump, who has threatened to reduce federal funding to the city. The mayor-elect described the meeting as customary at a press conference yesterday. He also said his team arranged the meeting. Mamdani and Trump are both from Queens and have spent months publicly criticizing each other. Trump has repeatedly called Mamdani a communist due to his professed affinity for democratic socialism and threatened to withhold federal funds from the city. If Mamdani seeks to implement some of his campaign promises. Amdani has attacked Trump's initiatives of his second term, including his effort to remove illegal immigrants from the United States. During an interview at the Brian Kilmeade show on Fox Radio this morning, President Trump says his meeting with Mamdani this afternoon will be open to the press. We'll bring it to you live. And the House of Representatives voted on a resolution today to denounce socialism. Lawmakers made the case against the political economic system. Florida Representative Maria Elvira Salazar introduced the resolution.
The reason why we're introducing this resolution is to condemn the horrors of socialism, and I'm presenting just the facts. And I invite my colleagues on the other side to vote to condemn this nefarious ideology. This has nothing to do with political parties. This is not a Democratic issue. This is not a Republican issue. This is a moral vote against an ideology that has destroyed millions and millions of families. Many of them, I serve those families in District Number 27, the heart of the city of Miami, the heart of the Cuban exile community, and now the Venezuelan community, and murdered more than 100 million lives, besides crushing hundreds of thousands of other families and individuals. Unfortunately, socialism and Marxism crushes the human soul.
Salazar also took to X this week ahead of today's vote. The Republican posted in part, quote, "Socialism has never produced freedom or prosperity, only suffering and authoritarian control." The lawmaker added, quote, "With this failed ideology gaining ground in the United States and throughout the hemisphere, I'm proud to lead this resolution and call out its dangers without hesitation." The House approved the resolution by a vote of 285 to 98, with 2 lawmakers voting present. Global coffee prices plunged today after President Trump rolled back 40% tariffs on Brazilian food products after signing an executive order yesterday. Arabica coffee futures slumped more than 4% this morning to around $3.6 per pound. They were previously down more than 6%, a 2-month low. Trump cited various officials with whom he said advised him to lift the tariffs, in part because of progress in the U.S. has made in trade negotiations with Brazil. Here's more on this.
President Donald Trump on Thursday removed his 40% tariffs on Brazilian food products. That includes levies on beef, coffee, and fruits that were imposed in July. The order will affect Brazilian imports to the U.S. on or after November 13th and may also require a refund of duties collected on those goods while the tariffs were still being charged, according to the text of the order released by the White House. The move follows a similar order by the administration last Friday to remove tariffs on several agricultural products from other countries. Brazil has recently become an important supplier of beef to the U.S. and normally supplies a third of the coffee used in the country. Retail coffee prices in the U.S., the world's largest coffee drinker, rose as much as 40% this year due to the tariffs and other market factors. Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva welcomed the removal of the tariffs.
Today, I am happy because President Trump has already begun to reduce some of the tariffs that had been imposed on certain Brazilian products.
The Congressional Budget Office now projects President Trump's global tariffs will save the U.S. $1 trillion less than previously estimated. The report shows changing tariff rates, especially changes involving China, India, the European Union, and Japan, are responsible for most of the downward revision. Even with the downgrade, the CBO says tariffs would still cut deficits by $2.5 trillion over 11 years and lower borrowing costs by another $500 billion. But the long-term future of Trump's tariffs authority now hinges on a Supreme Court case that could upend the policy altogether. And in an effort to lower rising energy costs, the Trump administration plans to open up oil drilling off the coasts of several states. This comes as Republicans in Congress are repealing several Biden-era policies. NTD's Melina Weisskopf reports.
Amid rising energy costs, Republicans are working to open up domestic production to lower costs. Yesterday, the Trump administration proposed the largest expansion of offshore oil drilling in decades. The plan is to open federal waters near California, Florida, and Alaska. It comes after lawmakers this week rolled back several Biden-era energy policies, putting Democrats and Republicans at odds.
And the entire world is talking about how to phase down our dependence on coal pollution and fossil fuel pollution. We are here in this alternate reality of the Republican majority.
Under the Biden administration, we were not allowed to access those important resources for the American people. In fact,
in the Senate yesterday, lawmakers repealed a Biden-era coal regulation in Wyoming.
Shuttering U.S. coal doesn't help the planet. It outsources pollution to the worst polluters on Earth and sends American jobs straight overseas.
The bill passed along party lines and is now awaiting President Trump's signature. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
President Trump will meet with NYC Mayor-elect Zohran-Mamdani today. Joining us to discuss is Madeleine Somerville, Democratic strategist, speechwriter, and attorney. And we have Gerard Filitti, political strategist and attorney specializing in international law. So good afternoon to you both. Thank you for joining us today. If I may, Madeleine, I'll start with you today. Just to start off here, maybe you can speak to the significance of this meeting.
So I think this meeting is incredibly significant. First of all, it's traditional for the mayor of the largest city in the United States of America to go meet with the president. But politically, I think that this meeting is significant because it speaks, it bodes well for Mamdani either way. He wins either way. And what I mean by that is if he goes in to this meeting and comes out fighting, saying that, you know, they couldn't get along no matter what they did, and he's going to keep fighting for New Yorkers, he wins. Right? Because the Democrats want that. If he comes out and he says, you know, I have been able to find common ground with the president, then he legitimizes the Democratic Socialist Party because right now it's looked at as, you know, a bunch of young kids who don't know what they're doing. You know, they're struggling to their belief system apply to the biggest city in the country. But I think if he goes in there and is sensible and reasonable, which I believe that he will be, and they can actually work together to try to get something done, I think that he ends up legitimizing his entire party. So it's a win for him either way.
Okay, Gerard, Madeline says it's a win for Mamdani either way at the end of this meeting. Can you talk to us about how you view this meeting, its significance?
This is a meeting between the man who changed the face of the Republican Party and the man who's changing the face of the Democratic Party. So in a way, this is the president of the Republican Party versus the future of where the Democrats go from here. And both have revitalized and brought new voters into the fold and excited voters to propel them into office. What's really significant today is that there is such a clash of ideologies. And at the end of the day, the question is whether Zoran Mamdani can actually govern effectively and not just use slogans and speeches to propel himself to power. And that is what this meeting will show, whether Mamdani is serious as an elected official, whether he can transition from a candidate to an actual mayor, and whether he can govern. And Donald Trump is someone who has been very effective in the last 150 days, 200 days of office, of setting the agenda for the nation. And whether Mamdani can actually find common ground or not, there is so much opposition built into Mamdani even before he assumes the office that we need to see where to go from here, and today's meeting will be telling.
So, Madeline, earlier you talked about some of the objectives, perhaps, that Mamdani could have in mind going into this meeting. Can you go a bit deeper into that? Can you list us a few more goals for President Trump and Mamdani going into this meeting?
Yeah, so it's very interesting because I think President Trump, for lack of a better term, game recognizes game. Right. So I think what he will see is that Zoran Mamdani invented sort of this affordability, not that he invented the word, but he sort of coined it for the problem of our time, right? The political problem of our time. And I think he's obviously recognized that as a major thing, because I watched him dodge using that word during his McDonald's speech the other day. He was like, whatever the cost of living problem that we have is. And he's used it in different contexts to let people know it bugs him, right? But I think game recognizes game. So when you get in that room together and you realize, hey, this is what's actually bothering people, it ends up being a win for both of them if they can figure out something that makes it better, right? And that actually is what what politics should be. Is we have the same goal, we just have different ideas of what's going to work in order to get there. And I don't think that Trump is an ideologue. Right. I don't think that he's tied to any piece from the Republican Party. Right. He's taken 10% of Intel shares, or proceeds that come in. Right. He doesn't care whether it's a socialist thing or not. He doesn't care what the label it is that you put on it. He'll find a different label, just like Zoran Mamdani found a label. They know how to communicate with people. And I think that they will know how to put the for lack of a better word, complications, I guess, aside and work together on what actually matters.
So, Gerard, can you respond to that? Can you talk about President Trump's goals into this meeting in addition to Mamdani's?
I think President Trump's goals, in addition to Mamdani's, President Trump's goals are to ensure that his policies are implemented. And by that, I mean he has a focus on law and order and on the economy. He wants to improve both. He wants to make sure that immigration crackdowns are followed through in New York City. He wants to be sure that New York City is a safer place to live. And that means enforcing the laws, not substituting social workers for police officers. I think Donald Trump will see a push to regulate taxes, to make them lower, to make regulations less burdensome on businesses, which is the opposite of what Mamdani wants to do. So going into this, I think they have vastly different visions of how to achieve a better New York. Where they may find common ground is, ironically perhaps, with real estate development. I think both men see that there is a need for additional affordable housing units, and how you get there might very well be a benefit of incentivizing companies to build and going and eliminating a lot of the regulations that have been a red tape. But at a very basic level, the difference between these two men is staggering. One sees a free market economy as the way forward in improving affordability and the ability of people to live in New York. The other sees a socialized system where you tax the rich and give benefits to everyone that's simply not sustainable and has been historically shown to do damage to cities and economies.
Both you and Gerard have raised this issue of common ground numerous times now. So I want to follow up on that. What is the level of cooperation do you expect to see from the two? How much common ground really do they have, Madeline?
Yeah, so I think they have a tremendous amount, actually, of common ground. We talked about it in terms of their ability to communicate. We talked about it in terms of being able to be in tune with what they know the American people want, and that it serves both of their interests to, for example, make housing more affordable and easier to access. I agree with that. Most everything Gerard just said. I think that the potential problem area here, right, is that Trump likes for people to submit to him. He likes to be the big dog in the room, which is why appealing to his ego works, because if you are submissive to him, he likes that. And Mamdani is not a submissive kind of guy. I think he's very respectful in a way that anybody should be. But when it comes to Mr. President, you're this, Mr. President, you're so great, in a way that we've seen foreign dignitaries do, right? And Trump has reciprocated by saying, we may not agree on things, but I'm going to take great care of you. I don't know if we'll necessarily see that here, because even though they have a tremendous amount of common ground in terms of their policy goals, I think that in practice, if people don't submit in terms of their ego to President Trump, it complicates things quite a bit.
Okay, so Gerard, if the situation calls for some form of negotiation by the two parties, and I suspect probably there may be, what leverage does each side have? What cards does Trump have to play, and what cards does Mamdani have?
The biggest leverage that Trump has is that he is the person who can control whether or not there is increased federal enforcement of laws in New York City, whether or not the National Guard is deployed to city streets, whether money that's been appropriated by Congress is withheld or suspended from infrastructure projects, be it building tunnels or subway lines or anything having to do with universities in New York City, including state and city financed universities. So Trump really has a lot of leverage coming into this. Mamdani, on the other hand, has populist rhetoric. He has the way about him that is motivating and getting younger voters to the polls, and that's really making a significant change in the voting demographic in New York City. So on the one hand, Trump has real means to enforce his will, but Mamdani has the power of the populist voice that could really resonate well and change voters more into the direction of democratic socialists and to the left, that would really harm Trump's ability to carry out his policies on a national level if Mamdani becomes a spokesperson for the face of the resistance in all 50 states going forward. So each has a role here, but I think Trump does have more levers to pull when it comes to actually implementing change in New York City if he so chooses.
I think you're totally right about that. And I think that's a thing that people are missing. And the other thing that people are missing is that it's still a win for Mamdani if he comes out and shakes hands with President Trump, because again, it will legitimize the notion of the Democratic Socialist Party being a legitimate party in the United States.
Okay, Madeline, maybe you can continue this idea. If we're talking about negotiations, how do you think the conversation will go when they touch on the topics of affordability, immigration enforcement, and sanctuary city policies?
So I think they will go differently for different subjects that you just brought up. When it comes to affordability, I know I had mentioned that previously. I think that it's in both of their best interests to be pro-business, because people already think that Mamdani is not. So it will be in his best interest and in New York's best interest to work with Trump. I think Gerard's suggestion about housing was spot on. I think that is again, common ground that they can find there. However, when it comes to safety, right, these are the reasons why Mamdani ran in the first place, right? Which is, we don't think public safety is, the way that it's structured, the way that our public safety system is structured in New York is the right way to do it. He wants a fundamental overhaul of it, right? The same thing with the National Guard being deployed, or with immigration. He wants a straight up 180, 360 of everything. And he's not going to relent on those things. I think probably in Mamdani's head, like as a person who has integrity but ran on specific things, right? If he wants to come out a winner in this, all he has to do is maintain his integrity, right? Because the public is only going to hold you to what you said that you were going to maintain. And you can always surprise them, but you can't lose if that's what you do. So if he goes in and says, I'm not relenting on the National Guard, not relenting on changing how we police things, but if you want to figure out what manners to go about in terms of creating affordability in the city, I'm all ears, because it doesn't cost me anything. So I think he's going to have to make those kinds of decisions.
Okay, Gerard, similar question to you. How do you think this meeting could impact New York City's future?
I think this impact will show whether or not the next 4 years for New York City will be bogged down in lawsuits and lawfare by either the Republicans against the Democrat Mamdani or the Democrats against President Trump trying to bring in a National Guard or do other things. I think whether this meeting goes well and there's a productive way to move forward on common ground, like the economy, like housing, like affordability, or it will become bogged down in rhetoric and legal action about policing and law and order and national security. That's what really we need to watch for, because there can be cooperation, there even can be animus, but so long as we don't get bogged down in the political style of lawsuits that will bog the city down, there will be progress. So we really need to look for a sense of goodwill between these two men. Both are from Queens, both love New York, both have a vision for New York that's for the better, completely different in many respects, but if they can find a common ground to move forward together, we're going to see progress over the next 4 years. If on the other hand, there's no personal understanding between the two, we'll see 4 years of struggle, of lawsuits, and of indecision at the state and federal level about what works best.
Okay, we got to wrap up this conversation. I'll ask each of you one more question. Madeline, what do you make of the House? And we played this package, this report earlier. What do you make of the House passing a resolution to denounce socialism right before Mamdani's meeting with Trump?
Well, I think that your choice to play the Congresswoman from Venezuela's piece there was very interesting, because it sort of allows the Democrats to still touch on the problem of bombing the ships that were in the Caribbean waters, in my view, trying to ignite an armed conflict with Venezuela. But so I think part of it was political, right, in touching on that specific issue. And I think it's very interesting as an overall, because obviously we want to make sure that we as a whole, right, and they had almost total consensus, we all agree we're not going to be a socialist country. We all agree that even though the Democratic Party supports this democratic socialist, we are not going to be a socialist country. This is a variation of that. It's not the same thing. So I actually think it's incredibly helpful, because it helps people delineate, it helps the American public delineate in their minds, right, what is actually happening here. I think this was a great move for the Democrats specifically, so that they could say that's not what we're endorsing here. I think it's really smart.
Okay, Gerard, final thoughts.
More people have suffered under socialism and died in the pursuit of communism than any other ideology. It is inherently dangerous to humanity. It's a good thing that the House condemned it. This is not America. Right. This is not what we want. And just like we've seen radicalization and extremism on the right, we have to be wary of radicalization on the left that is pushing for these socialist ideas, that is pushing for radicalism in a way that is contrary to our democratic principles. So it's a good thing that the Congress did this, and we have to be wary and mindful of what happens in New York City and anywhere else. We want the best for this country, but we don't want to follow in the footsteps of failed nations.
Okay, well, good conversation today. Thank you both. Madeline, Gerard, pleasure.
Great questions. Thank you.
Coming up, X has recovered most of its user accounts after an outage with its web provider caused issues for tens of thousands. Stay tuned for more news after this break.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, please listen closely. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. It's a rate lock for your life insurance that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. Many policies you see don't have one, but you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. This plan was designed for people on a fixed income with coverage options that start at $9.95 a month. That's less than 35 cents a day. Your rate is locked in for life. Coverage can never be canceled, and your acceptance is guaranteed. You cannot be turned down because of your health. See for yourself. Call for an information kit and gift. Both are free with no obligation.
Call 1-800-624-6556 for your free information and your free gift. That's 1-800-624-6556. 1-800-624-6556. Call now.
Are you sitting at home living in pain? Maybe it's in your hands, maybe your back or your hips. The good news is you don't need to live in pain. Why? Because there is Omega XL. a one-of-a-kind, natural, powerful joint relief supplement created from the green lip mussels of New Zealand. Drug-free, non-habit forming. It's small, easy to swallow, and it's backed by more than 40 years of clinical research. If you're experiencing daily aches and pains due to aging and overuse, try Omega XL. Just ask anybody who uses it. The results are undeniable.
I had a lot of joint pain, and that slowed me down.
I had considerable pain in my back.
Really felt the pain. I mean, in my ankles and in my heels.
I'm telling you about something that's gonna change your life. It has revived me.
This works.
I'm not a prisoner anymore to my pain.
As I was getting older, my joints started to feel that wear and tear. But then I tried Omega XL, and it changed my life. Today I'm here at my ranch exercising some of my polo ponies. So as you get older, it gets tougher. I was starting to suffer some of that business, and then I ran into somebody who said, look, you should try Omega XL. And look what it's done. I feel better than I felt in the last 30 years. Omega XL gave me the ability to get back in the saddle. It works great. If you're in pain, I want you to know that there is real hope out there. I'm living proof. See the difference it can make in your life, just like it did in mine.
Call now or order online to receive our special TV offer. Buy one bottle of Omega XL and get a second free. Plus, we'll also include a free bottle of Vitamin XL D3. 2 free bottles for the price of 1 bottle of Omega XL. A total value of $115. You pay only $49.95 and it ships free. Plus, you get a money-back guarantee. Buy one, get 2 free. Call or go online right now.
Birthright citizenship is under scrutiny today. The Supreme Court will meet in private to discuss President Trump's order on the topic. The measure said kids born to parents who are in the country illegally or temporarily are not U.S. citizens. The justices could say as soon as Monday whether they will hear Trump's appeal of lower court rulings that have struck down the citizenship restrictions. They have not taken effect anywhere in the United States. If the court steps in now, the case would be argued in the spring with a definitive ruling expected by early summer. The 14th Amendment states all persons born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. The Trump administration argues that children of illegal immigrants are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States as they are not there legally and therefore not entitled to citizenship. A federal judge yesterday ordered the Trump administration to end its National Guard deployment in Washington, D.C. The ruling won't take effect immediately as the judge put it on hold until December 11th to allow for an appeal. Here's more.
D.C. Attorney General Brian Schwab sued the administration over the deployment back in September, calling it a parallel police force. The Justice Department then asked to dismiss the case, saying the troops were not involved in arresting and charging people. As of now, more than 2,000 National Guard troops are still in the city. In response to the ruling, White House spokeswoman Abigail Jackson called the lawsuit, quote, another attempt at the detriment of D.C. residents to undermine the president's highly successful operations to stop violent crime in D.C.
The Treasury Department is moving against illegal immigrants getting tax credit benefits. It says new regulations are underway. Here's more.
The new rules will cover the refunded portions of certain income tax credits, like the Earned Income Tax Credit or Additional Child Tax Credit. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the Trump administration is enforcing the law and preventing illegal immigrants from claiming tax benefits intended for American citizens. The NYU Tax Law Center disagrees with the move. It says the tax code allows the child tax credit to be claimed for citizen children as long as at least one parent has a Social Security number.
A police officer at Lambert International Airport in St. Louis fatally shot a man wielding a knife early this morning. Authorities said the shooting took place outside the doors of a terminal. The rail line to Terminal 1 was briefly closed, with shuttles taking people from other drop-off points. The airport remained open. At St. Louis County Police spokesperson said officers had noticed a man in a restricted area who refused to leave. The spokesperson said the individual brandished a knife when they tried to get him to move. Police used tasers, but he continued to advance toward the officers. One of the officers shot and killed the individual when he refused to stop. Meanwhile, an infant botulism outbreak has expanded to 15 states. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said 31 children have been hospitalized. Infant botulism occurs when babies ingest spores from a bacterium. The spores grow in the gut and make toxins. According to the Cleveland Clinic, symptoms include constipation, poor feeding, a loss of head and muscle control, lethargy, and a weak cry, among others. The CDC has advised parents of infants who consume the formula to seek immediate medical care if they exhibit symptoms. Texas has the highest number of infections at 6, followed by California with 4, and Oregon and Arizona with 3. Washington, Minnesota, Illinois, and North Carolina reported 2 infections each. Idaho, Michigan, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and Maine had 1 each. The CDC linked the outbreak to infant formula produced by manufacturer ByHeart. The company has voluntarily recalled the affected products. And advocacy groups are warning parents to steer clear of AI-powered toys this holiday season. They say the gadgets can expose young children to serious risks. Here's more.
Children's advocacy group Fair Play says many toys use the same advanced chatbots that have already shown they can engage kids in harmful or inappropriate conversations. One plush AI bear has been pulled from the market after researchers found it discussed sexually explicit topics and even gave potentially dangerous advice to children. A report published last week found the bear suggested where to find knives in the home and was quick to discuss sexually explicit topics in graphic detail. Advocates warn young children are especially vulnerable because their brains are being wired for the first time and they naturally trust kind and friendly characters. The company behind the recalled bear Follow toy says it has withdrawn all of its AI toys and is now conducting a safety audit. But experts say that's far from a systematic fix. Their advice: buy your kids traditional toys that help children practice imagination, language, and problem solving without AI doing the thinking for them.
Most X users can once again sign into their accounts and post. This comes after a major outage at web infrastructure company Cloudflare. At last check, there were less than 500 reports of issues with the platform. This is based on user-submitted data to downdetector.com. This is a big drop from a height of 20,000 reports earlier in the day. This week, a file crashed Cloudflare's systems that handles web traffic. This prevented users from accessing platforms like X, Canva, and ChatGPT. Cloudflare has since fully restored its services, and issues reported to Down Detector for Cloudflare are also down to about 150. President Trump suggests he's giving Ukraine 6 days to accept a new U.S.-brokered peace deal. How Ukraine is responding to the fast-developing peace process. Stay tuned for more news after this break.
When I arrived in the U.S. at 19, I struggled to find job opportunities without a high school diploma. My name is Ariel, and my entire life changed when I took a chance and I got my high school diploma at age 22. Everything I have, my education, my career, my marriage, I owe to the Adult Literacy Center and my teachers. They were with me every step of the way, helping with my English and math, making sure I pushed through all the challenges. Oh my goodness.
So Ariel, we made this yearbook for you. It has notes from all the people that are here. Your achievement has set an example for so many students. Most importantly, your daughter.
Education was the key that unlocked all my opportunities.
When you graduate, they graduate. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free and supportive adult education centers near you.
I debate all day. It's what I do. But there are some things that are undebatable, like your mental health, my own mental health. I was in a dark place when my brother passed away in a car accident. I've never been more devastated than the day I lost my mom. I was depressed, miserable, in ways I never imagined. I reached out, and my sisters came, my pastor, my therapist. They helped me get through it. I found that the more I spoke up, the healthier my mind became. The chaos that was in me began to subside. I was more focused, clear. When you love your mind, you can go so much further. That's not up for debate. Find mental health resources at loveyourmindtoday.org.
President Trump welcoming NYC's mayor-elect, self-described Democratic socialist Amdani to the White House today. This as the House passes a resolution condemning what it calls the horrors of socialism. The vote taking place shortly after Amdani touched down at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport ahead of his afternoon sit-down with the president. We now go live to NTD's Washington correspondent Mari Otsu, who's standing by at the White House. Mari, good afternoon to you. What can we expect from this conversation, and what have Amdani and the president have been saying about each other leading up to this meeting?
Don, good afternoon. Yes, this is certainly a highly anticipated meeting, and it will be their first time ever sitting down with each other. Analysts don't know exactly what to expect, whether this will be a calm conversation or whether it will turn potentially combustible. Mamdani has cooled off his rhetoric recently, but he's previously accused President Trump of being an authoritarian and, quote, attacking the very fabric of this democracy. He also framed much of his mayoral campaign as a battle cry against President Trump, calling himself Donald Trump's worst nightmare. Take a look.
The best way to respond to Donald Trump and to defeat these kinds of threats is to actually stand up and fight back.
Because the Donald Trumps of our city have grown far too comfortable taking advantage of their tenants. We will put an end to the culture of corruption that has allowed billionaires like Trump to evade taxation and exploit tax breaks. We can respond to oligarchy and authoritarianism with the strength it fears, not the appeasement it craves. After all, if anyone can show a nation betrayed by Donald Trump how to defeat him, it is the city that gave rise to him. And if there is any way to terrify a despot, it is by dismantling the very conditions that allowed him to accumulate power. This is not only how we stop Trump, it's how we stop the next one. So Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up.
Mamdani and President Trump are from diametrically opposed philosophies. Mamdani, a self-described democratic socialist who President Trump calls a communist, which is a label that Mamdani has repeatedly rejected. Mamdani's campaign promises include free public buses, universal child care, increasing New York City's minimum wage to $30 by 2030, and city-run grocery stores. President Trump, a native New Yorker, has called those policies crazy, but says that he does want to see everything work out for New York. And Mamdani on Thursday softened his tone just a day before his sit-down with the president, saying that he requested this meeting and is not concerned about it, framing it instead as an opportunity for him to, quote, make his case. Take a look.
I have many disagreements with the president, and I believe that we should be relentless and pursue all avenues and all meetings
that could make our city affordable for every single New Yorker. I intend to make it clear to President Trump that I will work with him on any agenda that benefits New Yorkers.
This meeting is coming as the House passes a Republican-led resolution to denounce what it calls the horrors of socialism. The vote, which passed 285 to 98, is coming just after Mamdani touched down in Washington ahead of his meeting. And this bill echoes a proclamation that President Trump issued earlier this month, declaring the week of the off-year elections in which Mamdani won anti-communist week, saying that terms like social justice and democratic socialism cloak what he calls the same evil doctrine of communism, which has only brought ruin throughout history. And while President Trump has called Mamdani his, quote, little communist, the president says that he wants to see Mamdani succeed for the sake of New York City. Take a look.
Speaks volumes that tomorrow we have a communist coming to the White House, because that's who the Democrat Party elected as the mayor of the largest city in the country.
He's got a different philosophy. He's a little bit different. I give him a lot of credit for the run. He did a successful run, and we all know that runs are not easy. But I think we'll get along fine. Look, we're looking for the same thing. We want to make New York strong. And I don't know exactly what he means by turn the volume up, because turn the volume up, he has to be careful when he says that to me. I mean, he was very nice in calling, as you know, and we're going to have a meeting. I guess we meet at 3 o'clock today, and I think it's going to be quite civil.
Mamdani and President Trump are expected to talk affordability, economic security, and public safety, with Mamdani noting that it is only customary for the incoming mayor of New York City to meet with the president. But it remains to be seen whether the meeting will result in further federal city cooperation and what this might mean for New York City's federal funding going forward. Don, back to you.
Okay, Mari, thank you. President Trump suggests he's giving Ukraine 6 days to accept a new U.S.-brokered peace deal. The agreement would include concessions from Ukraine giving up territory currently occupied by Russia. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pastor has the latest on the fast-developing peace process.
President Trump suggesting Thanksgiving is the deadline for Ukraine to accept an American-brokered peace deal. Trump was on the Brian Kilmeade show on Friday, talking about the issue.
So is next Thursday the deadline that you gave, a loose deadline for Ukraine?
Well, we have, I've had a lot of deadlines, but if things are working well, you tend to extend the deadlines. But Thursday is, we think, an appropriate time.
A Ukrainian lawmaker and the Associated Press published a 28-point proposal. If agreed to, Ukraine would receive firm security guarantees, while its still armed forces would be capped at 600,000. The country would formally pledge to not join NATO. In return, NATO would codify that it will never admit Ukraine or station troops there. It also outlines territorial agreements recognizing Crimea, Luhansk and Donetsk as de facto Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky issuing a stern warning on Friday, suggesting that ending the conflict will come at a cost in any of the current scenarios.
Now Ukraine may find itself facing a very difficult choice, either the loss of dignity or the risk of losing a key partner, either the difficult 28 points or an extremely difficult winter, the most difficult, and further risks.
Zelensky also announced that he spoke with Vice President J.D. Vance on Friday, saying, "We managed to cover a lot of the details of the American side's proposal for ending the war, and we're working to make the path forward dignified and truly effective." Russian President Vladimir Putin says the U.S. plan could be the basis of a resolution of the conflict. But he added that if Kiev turns down the proposal, then Russian forces will advance further. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
France's top general Fabien Madan ignites a political row after warning citizens may face sacrifices if Russia tests NATO. Analysts argue the threat is exaggerated while Europe watches closely as the U.S. pressures Kyiv on a peace deal. NTD international correspondent David Vivez reports from Paris.
To prepare citizens for the possibility of future conflict with Russia. His message was blunt. France, he said, must be ready to accept suffering, shift its economy toward defense production, and even face the risk of losing its children if Moscow challenges NATO. Mandon, appointed earlier this year, had already told Parliament that France must be ready within 3 or 4 years for a possible shock involving Russia. But the uproar highlights deep divisions inside France over how real the threat actually is. This reaction follows other measures that have raised public questions, such as the government's plan to distribute a 72-hour survival kit by the end of the year. According to President of Centers for European Studies Rodrigo Ballester, this aligns with previous stances from both France and the EU, which have been warning about the threat Russia poses to Europe.
It's the rhetoric of some countries in the West, notably Macron, for example, Mark Rutte, who is the Secretary General of NATO, that there is a risk of Russian invasion on Western Europe and in Europe in general. I think this is total nonsense. I mean, we can see that the Russians are already struggling in Ukraine. It's shocking to see that France is overplaying the Russian threat. It doesn't make sense, again, to call for these Russian threats, to overplay this Russian threat when actually there are other threats in the European Union that are much more real.
Meanwhile, European leaders are concerned as Washington pressures Kiev to accept a peace deal requiring the Donbass and major military cuts, which many in the EU view as near capitulation. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said today that the US plan must be made with Ukraine and Europe. President Volodymyr Zelensky warns Ukrainians that the coming days could be one of the most difficult moments since the invasion began. He says he's ready for honest work with the United States, but will not accept terms that undermine Ukraine's dignity, sovereignty, or territorial integrity. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
Missouri is ramping up efforts to seize China-owned properties in the U.S. The state is seeking help from the Trump administration to collect a $25 billion court judgment tied to the COVID pandemic. It's one that Beijing refused to recognize. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has the report.
According to Missouri's Attorney General on Wednesday, the state is asking the U.S. State Department to let Beijing know that it plans to pursue Chinese-owned assets. Her office is putting together a list of targets, focusing on properties entirely or partially owned by the Chinese regime on American soil. Missouri's lawsuit accuses China of hoarding personal protective equipment, including masks, medical gowns, and gloves during the early stages of COVID-19. This hoarding caused widespread harm to Americans, including deaths. The lawsuit also adds that China harmed Missouri and its residents by driving up the cost of health care and emergency response. A federal judge initially dismissed the lawsuit in 2022, saying Missouri couldn't sue China. But an appeals court later revived one part of the case, the allegation that Beijing hoarded protective equipment. When Chinese officials didn't respond, the judge accepted Missouri's damage estimate of more than $8 billion and tripled it under federal law. He then added nearly 4% interest, bringing the total to roughly $25 billion. China's Foreign Affairs Ministry says its actions during the pandemic aren't subject to U.S. law and does not recognize the ruling.
Meanwhile, another state has successfully sued China over COVID-19. In May, Mississippi won its $200 billion lawsuit, and now the big question is how the state plans to collect the money. Black Friday is almost here. We hear from an expert on shopping trends for tips on saving money and what scams to avoid after this break.